Is inflation sneaking in the back door? Open Brand's chief economist breaks down how consumer prices are really moving right now and what retailers are hiding as inflation squeezes everyday Americans.
A little more heat in September. In fact, the stretch from August to September is the strongest stretch of price increase that we've seen since the end of last year. And the biggest increases we've seen have been across personal care products and then to a lesser extent communications devices, small communications devices, as well as recreational products, which would include things like headphones. And the primary reason that we think there has been acceleration across those product groups is the removal or the elimination of the de minimis exemption in August. For those of you that need a refresher, the de minimis exemption previously allowed packages that were worth under $800 to come into the country, and the importers didn't have to pay any duties on them. So tariffs really didn't apply. Well, that was removed in August, and so what that means is a lot of those small, relatively inexpensive goods, again, personal care products, small communications devices and recreational devices would have been subject to duties. And so we are seeing an acceleration of about 0.6% in September. That's up from about 0.5% in August.
Now, at the same time, in October so far, you see things cooling off. There's some early discounting heading into the holiday season. I guess it's important for investors to know whether you think that's retailers cutting prices, discounting because they can or because they have to, because they won't have enough consumer demand to meet the prices where they'd like them.
Yeah, you know, our early read in October, we release a CPI Nowcast every 10 days, and through October 10th, which that period did include Amazon's Prime Big Deal Day, and what we saw was heavy discounting, not just from Amazon, but also from retailers like Walmart that are really trying to compete with Amazon, and we've seen some pretty significant discounts, especially in that personal care space. Now, no doubt, as we go throughout the rest of October, the impacts of heavily discounting by Amazon and Walmart in early October will, smooth out for the rest of the month. Now, the big question, like you asked, is that going to spill over into November and into December, into the holiday months? Consumers have been hit with price increases pretty steadily over the past several years. COVID is still in a relatively close rearview mirror, and so there's a lot of price sensitivity amongst consumers. And so we do think that retailers are going to try to be as competitive as they can, especially going into the holiday season when consumers are, up against a wall when it comes to inflation, especially of everyday goods.
Do you have data showing whether or not there are continuing legs to this idea that we've seen out there that working class consumers are especially price conscious during this period, whereas, more well-heeled luxury consumers who perhaps have more money in the stock market are still spending more freely?
Yeah, I mean, much of the consumption in the U.S. has actually been on the upper end of the income distribution. Those that are in the middle or the lower end have, felt a lot of price pressures over the years. So we do think, especially for cheaper, affordable luxury items, that retailers are going to have to be, very, very competitive when it comes to pricing those goods. And that's exactly what we saw in the first 10 days of October with Prime Big Deal Day. It wasn't the big ticket items like, big expensive things. It was smaller things, personal care items like toothpaste. I bought a bunch of Crest whitening strips. I know a coworker of mine bought, small smart rings that were discounted. So, we're not talking about the big things. It's the smaller things. And I think that's retailers recognizing that, those in the middle or lower income are feeling the price pressures.